Our Wednesday night group is open to all who are interested, and our Sunday night group is for those who have experienced incarceration. The OTW group is supported by both Contemplative Outreach's Prison Outreach Service Team and Prison Contemplative Fellowship. We'll hear from several members of our community about how centering prayer has affected their lives. Then we'll center for 20 minutes. Our group has a tradition at United in Prayer Day of lighting a candle to represent those who cannot be with us because they've passed on, because they are behind walls, or for any other reason. The candle has been spotlighted as it's being lit. There's one other special reason we light this candle today, which is also the reason Mary and Jim, two of our members, are not able to join us for this hour. They will be traveling to be with Wendell Grissom, an inmate on death row in Oklahoma who is scheduled to be executed on Thursday. So we light this candle for him, for them, and for all who face the darkness, as well as for the end of the death penalty. Mary is Wendell's spiritual advisor and is scheduled to be the only person other than prison staff in the room at the time of the execution. Chandra will now read a few sentences from Mary.
Mary writes, I will be standing at Wendell's feet. I picture him outstretched as on a cross. I am allowed to touch his feet and pray. I am thinking of Mary at the foot of the cross. I will trust in her strength and allow my heart to be broken as hers was and know something of what she felt. My presence is bringing comfort to Wendell's mother as she cannot touch him. For this, I am so grateful.
We will now hear from a number of people sharing their experiences. We'll begin with Mike Kelly.
I can't tell you how excited it is to be here because you're going to hear redemption stories. And I'm excited about that. In the interest of time, I'm going to dive right in by reading the words of a young man named Mark Maxey. He was one of well over 1,000 men who were introduced to centering prayer at Folsom Prison. Both Phil and I knew him well. Here's what Mark has to say. What a joy it was to read Phil's article entitled Meditation in Folsom. I too was a convicted felon serving a 6-year sentence. Eventually, a community volunteer introduced a small group of us to centering prayer meditation as taught in Open Mind, Open Heart by Thomas Keating, a Cistercian monk who truly walks the talk. I read the book and cried. Keating calls it prayer of the heart because it reaches to the deepest core of our being. All I know is that the daily meditation practice prescribed by Father Keating transformed my life. Joy and happiness, the desire to live right, and fellowshipping moment by moment with God, these began to infiltrate the fabric of my being. I saw gradual changes in my thinking, direction, and goals as they became more and more godly and spiritually oriented. I never before had these elements of character been present in my life. The same thing was happening to other men in our fellowship, all convicted felons, all of us growing together. We were prisoners learning how to be free on the outside, on the inside. Looking forward to our Friday night group meetings, typically attended by 50 or more men. In a place overrun with prejudice and mistrust, we were an extraordinary mixture of blacks, whites, Mexicans, Buddhists, Muslims, Protestants, Catholics, and Jews, and more, as we quieted our minds and began to rest in God's love. all ethnic and religious barriers broke down. A nonviolent ethic began to permeate our fellowship. We became brothers and recognized our need to support each other in our journey together. Just crossing paths in the cell blocks or out in the yard was a blessing. People who knew me before I went to prison are in awe of the changes I have made and continually comment on the joy and love they see in my actions. I'm living proof of the transformation that is possible when volunteers bring contemplative meditation into prisons. I know the power of this ministry. So does my family, my parole officer, and my employer. My father said to me, "Mark, whatever it is that you're doing, don't ever stop." My parole officer said, "Mark, I know you will never return to prison. You're one of the few who will beat the odds." And I believe she is right, because as long as I continue to nourish my soul every day, prayerfully quieting my mind and communing with God, the desire to disrespect myself or anyone else is gone. If I were able to talk to my brothers in prison, I would say this: before hitting the streets, have your daily meditation practice securely in place. Readjusting to society after years in prison is hard enough, but losing your spiritual support system may weaken your daily practice. Find a weekly fellowship to join or begin one yourself. You only need 2 or 3 to get started. Your daily meditation practice will be more important than ever when you're released. It will ease the stress and give you the strength to stand up to all you will have to face. Remember, communing with God each and every day is our freedom. It doesn't matter where you are. This is the freedom we have all longed for. Finally, to our society at large, I want to say this: I know we do not deserve your forgiveness, but please do not give up on us. You're going to see contemplative fellowship groups like ours in more and more prisons. As this occurs, more and more convicts will be leaving those prisons armed not with guns and knives or hatred and bitterness, but instead with a new nonviolent way of thinking and a daily meditation practice. Please support these prison ministries and the men and women who come out of them. Had it not been for contemplative fellowship in Folsom Prison, I would not be where I am today. God gave me a second chance, and my daily spiritual disciplines have taught me the meaning of true freedom. Mark Maxey has since written a book called Dharma Seeds, which is available on Amazon. So I was a volunteer at Folsom Prison. As a prison volunteer, my fondest memories have to do with the people that I met while I was on this adventure. And I'll start with Father Keating. After 2 or 3 years when this program began, we were realizing this was becoming a really, really big deal, and we all decided we needed to get the word out. Phil wrote an article, Meditation in Folsom, followed by Mark Maxey's, which was entitled Meditation After Folsom, which I just read. So then I was offered an opportunity to give a talk, a presentation, and at that presentation we had it taped, and I took that tape and I sent it to Father Keating. And lo and behold, Father Keating calls me up and says, "How can I help?" So he ended up visiting Folsom Prison. And I remember him saying, they don't need me much around Christmas time, so, I'd be free to come over and visit with the men in Folsom Prison. So he did. And it was videotaped. And then later he visited Folsom Prison. And at that point, there were 5 other prisons that had started centering prayer and had their own centering prayer groups, including San Quentin and Mule Creek State Prison, where Father Keating also was videotaped.
So it's really an exercise.
There, he focused on centering prayer as an 11th step practice.
To consent to God's presence and act.
Here's some quick snapshots of other memories. Again, Mark Maxey, when he was with us in Folsom Prison, he worked really hard to try and go directly out of prison to a monastery. He wanted to become a monk. And then there's Paul, who was serving a life sentence, and he would introduce himself to people and saying, you know, I'm not a prisoner, I'm a monk. And then there's Blake, who would introduce himself to people, and he would introduce himself as, you know, when you've come in here, you think you're in a prison, but this isn't a prison for us, this is a monastery. My favorite memory may be when Father Carl Arrico approached me and asked, what did you do to Father Keating? He said that when he picked up Father Keating at the airport, he got off the plane with tears in his eyes and said, Carl, I'll never have to wonder if what we are doing is worthwhile after meeting the men in Folsom Prison. If you're interested in rubbing shoulders with some of these folks, you can go to the playlist of various prison-related videos, including those of Father Keating's visits to Mule Creek State Prison and Folsom Prison. My talk that inspired Father Keating to visit is also available there, with the details of how the Contemplative Fellowship program first got started. That's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mike. Our next speaker will be Lawrence. Lawrence.
Hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to speak about the practice of centering prayer in prisons and how transformative it is. And, you know, the first thing I like to say is, please don't think that centering prayer takes bad people and turns them into good people. But in reality, it wakes people up to the nature that's inside of them, the way that God actually sees them, you know. And I really want to thank Mike Kelly, who just spoke, because he brought the practice to centering prayer. And then you're going to hear from Phil, the one that led us. Him and Hound Dog, they were the OGs at prison, the first original centering prayer practitioners. They made it possible for every race to come in and have a place to talk to God. And Father Keating did what they said in the Bible. You know, I was in prison and you came and visited me, and he left that seed of love. So by the time I got there in 2009, I met my friend, teacher and mentor, Ray Leonardini, who was the founder of Prison Contemplative Fellowship, and who wrote the book Finding God Within, and also the book Toxic Shame. Still remains one of the wisest men I've ever met in my life. He was the first one that told me something like, you can have an intimate relationship with God. And, you know, he taught me to just sit there and be silent and disregard all of the little bull that was going on in my mind, you know, and listen to the silence within, where God would speak to me, and where God was able to tell me that, you know what, I love and forgive you, and there's nothing that you can ever do that I wouldn't love and forgive you for. And what I want you to do in return is do your best to follow what I say. Love God. If you love God, if you love me, you'll love yourself, because I made you. And then the second one that just might be a little bit difficult as learning to love yourself is to love everyone else the way I love you. And God let me know that if I did that to the best of my ability, that he would bless my life beyond my wildest dreams, any circumstance that was happening in my life. And I find that to be true. So now that's what I do to the best of my ability. Look at all of God's creatures with the love that God has for them, and try the best to promote that. You know, anyone that like to volunteer, don't feel that you have to be a special person. just come in and be yourself, because that's all people need. Love and acceptance from people that are just like them, that are struggling like they are. And you use kindness, compassion, and care to make the world a better place. With that, I'll pass it to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Why don't we have B go next?
Hi guys, good morning. I did 25 years in prison. Um, Growing up, I was a broken kid. Every time I would face anxiety, depression, or feelings of shame, I would always resort towards violence, gang violence, just looking for love in the wrong places, and drugs and everything else bad. In prison, I continued on with that behavior. And there was a point in my life where I was just tired. I was tired of waking up every single day feeling like a piece of. And some of my close friends introduced me to centering prayer, where I met Matt Kelly, Chandra, and I met Ray, and I never looked back. I never looked back. It was a long process for me. It was a long process for me. Um, Man, I'm so nervous. I've been home 5 years later. 5 years later, I sit here, and it hasn't been easy. That's just the truth. I sit here 5 years later, and I'm a father to an autistic child. I sit here 5 years later, and I'm the only one that's taking care of my mom. I sit here 5 years later, and I feel the pressure that I know that will never bring me down. It can bring me down, but pressure that I know that will not break me. It won't break me because I wouldn't have got to this point had I not been through this practice. I would have made a lot of horrible mistakes that led me to prison. Now I sit still with myself. I sit still with myself, and I tell myself daily through my practice that everything will be okay. Not a positive affirmation just to trick my mind, but it comes from a knowing that I would have never knew had I not been able to find myself from within. A knowing that I would have never knew had I not found God from within. A knowing that despite my troubles, it doesn't just help me to cope with the daily stresses of life, but empowers me to help other people too, and to make sure that they don't repeat the same mistakes that I made in life. Thank you.
Thank you, B. Speaking from the heart. Appreciate that. So next up is Kenneth.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I was recently released from prison after serving 28 years, in which during said time I was introduced to centering in prayer by Mary and Jim, who faithfully came into the prison I was at every Sunday to teach the practice. And upon my release, they invited me to join outside the walls, centering in prayer group, in which we meet every Sunday evening. After seeking God's forgiveness, I turned to Him wholeheartedly. And by sitting in the refining fires of regret in prison, I was able to embrace the vital elements of my spirituality and humanity. For in order to transform my life, I had to transform my heart. For God considers one's heart and treats us according to the quality of our hearts. And it's liberating to reflect and know that the way in which I fell short has become the doorway back to my true innate self and the realignment with God's divine providence. And there's only two rules on the path to God and the community of self, and that is begin and continue. My beloved brothers and sisters in my centering prayer outside the walls group has welcomed me wholeheartedly. And I will end with, may we all be blessed with guidance so that we can navigate through our spiritual lives on this path we all on with heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker will be Richard.
January was the 1 year anniversary for my release from prison. As I've gone through this year, I've been asked by a few people how my first year was, how I overcame stuff, how I'm still dealing with the difficulties I'm facing right now after spending 17 years incarcerated. And I've thought about it, and there's only one answer, and that is centering prayer. This practice is the single most formative thing I do to remain sane. And it was the key to gaining the most powerful skill that I currently possess, the ability to be still. For most of my life, I've just reacted to other things, being pushed along like a domino, struck from behind by others, and then striking those in front of me. But centering prayers transformed my thoughts and my reality. I am no longer moved by the forces of this world alone, but now have the ability to be still, to wait on God and trust Him, to give back to those who strike me a different energy without striking other people as a result. Being connected to God is transformative. And I am so grateful to those who brought the practice to me inside and those who bring it to others inside prison walls. And I am praying today that God will move the hearts of those listening to me to seek what they may find in the tangled gardens of incarceration. Because, as the volunteers testify, it's a place we're all blessed together, and it is a holy place, a monastery indeed. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Richard. Our last sharer will be Phil. So, Phil, you want to speak?
Sure. I'm going to echo what everybody else here has shared. Centering prayer changes lives. I did 32 years in prison, most of it at Old Folsom, and was one of the original members of the centering prayer group. I learned that God is love. I was raised with God as you better do right or He'll punish you. And it took me going to prison and learning through centering prayer and what was going on with that group to what is right, what is good, and what God is, and God is love. So for me, it totally changed me from an animal into a pretty respectable human being. So thank you all for attending, and thank you all for sharing, and thank you all for listening to us. We hope we've been able to share something with you. Now we will take a few minutes to prepare for our sit. It'll be 20 minutes long. Get yourself comfortable. Take a few deep breaths. Breathe in. Breathe out. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.